Hey everyone, welcome to Sociastrology. Today we are going to look at the year 2025 on a personal level. We're going to look at this from the context of your rising or sun signs to see how this year is going to play out for you personally. So we're going to go through the major transits for the year to decipher the most important factors for you. So we're going to look at Pluto in Aquarius, which has just permanently moved in November, and look at how that's going to play into the fact that Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn are all changing signs this year. So they're going to be in different houses in your chart than they have been for ages. And then we also will look at Jupiter and its ingress into Cancer to look at where that benefit and luck, goodwill is coming through for you next year. And we will also look at this big epic Mars retrograde process that we have just started going through and will be playing out for the whole first half of the year. And then we will look at the nodal axis and its sign change into Pisces and Virgo to see how the eclipses are likely to play out for you, with eclipses in Pisces, Virgo, and Aries within the context of your own personal chart. So this should play out. This should work perfectly for your rising sign. It could probably also hold for your sun sign as well, but also for a detailed description of what to expect in the coming year, do feel free to book a personal reading. What I do is I look at your natal chart, I go deeply into all of that, but then I use a lot of different timing techniques to see which eclipses are most likely to play out in a very poignant way for people. Whether or not their zodiacal releasing indicates that certain alignments are likely to play out and manifest in a specific way or not, and all of the transits to your own personal planets and so forth. So to really dig into this, I definitely recommend a personal reading, but this should hold really perfectly for your rising sign, and it will probably also apply for your sun sign as well. Additionally, for a mundane astrology general overview of the coming year, politically, historically, socially, I just published last week a really epically long video about that. So if you have the time and you are interested in how this year is also likely to play out on the world stage, I recommend checking that out too. And other than that, if you are new here, do please consider subscribing for future videos. I do topics like this, so the mundane astrology on the one hand, and then I tend to look at the exact same alignment or time frames from a personal standpoint and take it through all of the signs. So if that's something that is of interest to you, then do please feel free to subscribe. I would love to have you here for future videos. And if you don't mind hitting the thumbs up button, I would greatly appreciate that. It helps the video to spread around. It helps the channel to grow. So I am deeply, deeply grateful for all of that. And without any further ado, let's get into your reading. For Cancer, we have Pluto in the 8th house of other people's resources, debts, power dynamic, deep, committed, intimate relationships, psychological materials, fears, and occult matters. So spirituality, but more along the lines of occulted things or esoteric matters. We also have then Saturn and Neptune will be moving into your 10th house of career, public standing, reputation. And we have Uranus moving into your 12th house of spirituality, additionally psychological matters, but more along the lines of the subconscious rather than the patterns of power dynamics of the 8th house. The 8th house tends to deal with those kinds of psychological topics, whereas the 12th house is our kind of unconscious conditioning, our subconscious as it is, and our own patterns along those lines. The 12th house also has to do with service to others, really wanting to be of compassionate service to others. And this house additionally delves into These kind of questions of behind or beyond the veil matters, esoteric matters, things along these lines. So these are highly esoteric houses. They are houses that are a little bit difficult for us to access and to control because this is subconscious for us. And this tends to deal with matters that are within the control of other people. So these are things to keep in mind and to work through this year. So with Pluto, which is a planet of transformation, it's a planet of power dynamics in and of itself. It tends to bring matters to their core. It tends to blow out of proportion things that are minor and to sweep aside for a long time before you realize it things that are actually pretty significant and important. And so it can have this interesting dynamic where in the eighth house, you can have a really deep and significant impact on others, especially those that you are connected to either in terms of an intimate relationship or where you have some control over their life or vice versa. But they can also have that kind of an influence or power or control over you. So major themes of power and control in relationships coming up really for a couple of decades. And that doesn't mean that there can't be a healthy relationship that plays out during this period of time. But it does caution around power dynamics to try to be consciously aware of them, to try not to let things become too unequal in either direction within your relationships. And that'll be something that's pretty important just to kind of say off the bat here. You could also certainly run across some manipulative people. So I just want to get that out of the way. I want to get those warnings out and then be able to move on to a lot more of what will be going on with these placements for you. So Pluto and Uranus in the 8th and the 12th, transformation for sure of the psyche and also of the subconscious. Major changes along these lines. You could be delving way into psychology and just digging up so much psychological material to work through around this time. You would have a huge help and like an absolute boon to any sort of study that you do within the context of psychological matters around this time. But also, if you are able to receive therapy, like psychological therapy throughout this period of time, it's also super likely to be very fruitful and to just have total, really powerful, really cutting to the core of the issue kind of breakthroughs and insight. So that would not be, if it's something you can afford, that would be a wonderful investment and likely to be extremely effective. But additionally, this brings way more engagement with and interest and fascination with matters beyond the veil. Again, esotericism, also research. So things that are hidden, even if it's not specifically of a spiritual bent, you can dig really deeply into matters and dig up things that have been either intentionally covered up or are just really difficult to understand for people that maybe they haven't been researched very thoroughly by others. And so you could make some major breakthroughs along those lines. But it's very likely that you're just going to really enjoy the sense of, I don't quite want to say power, but fascination that you get from going deep into a given topic and to really get into it and to look at topics that are really out of the ordinary around this period of time as well. Now, with Saturn and Neptune in your 10th house, these are slightly different kinds of energies here. And by slightly, I mean totally. So, Saturn is very reserved, it is cautious, it is very serious minded, even stoic. it requires a great deal of effort to be put into things, and it requires a lot of integrity and upright behavior. And if it doesn't quite receive that, it can feel like it's not a friend, like it's not helping out. And the thing is with Saturn, it's not, it doesn't have to be a problem. It can actually be really productive, but it requires really clean effort on the part of someone receiving a transit from it. So that is how Saturn typically plays out. But Neptune is a very different kind of archetype that we're dealing with. So this is very idealistic, very compassionate, very global in its focus and its influence. It is very likely to romanticize certain situations. It leads not through tangible evidence, which is what Saturn offers if you're good, if you put in the effort, and it wants to reward you. It will do so, and you will see it. And also, if you're not putting in the effort, then it will take something away, and that will also be very apparent. With Neptune, it's all a feeling. And so it requires you to really follow your intuition, to follow your gut, to follow your feelings on matters, which should be relatively straightforward for you with Cancer strong in your chart. And then also with Pluto and Uranus behind the veil here. Yes, these are areas that can be a little bit difficult to tap into, but you have some help when it comes to your intuition and things coming through pretty sharply. And that being a kind of powerhouse gift of yours that is developed throughout this period of time, is that you're able to pretty quickly ascertain what is going on with a given situation, which helps a lot because Neptune isn't going to tell you. Neptune won't lay out bare the dynamics of a given situation. And with these two playing out in this career house, this house of your public standing, your reputation, this is a very important area for you to kind of know what's going on. And that's what can be a bit frustrating about having Neptune here, is that you can't go by the tangible evidence of something. You can't just follow the logical path because Neptune is offering rewards. Neptune does help. It wants to give you something, but it's not going to tell you how to get it. It's just going to give you like a, hey, wouldn't that be nice? So maybe you should pursue that, you know? So, and it can also bring to your attention kind of synchronistically opportunities that are pretty big that are available to you, and that can be, with Neptune there, something of a dream come true, but we can't take our eye off the ball with Saturn there. And so that's why these can be a bit difficult to balance. Now, when they come through together, where they overlap as an archetype is in wisdom and deep-seated experiential knowledge that can be applied in a very productive and practical way, but additionally in terms of sacrifice when these two come together, additionally like worldly structures and things like this. They both in their own way represent the world. You can have a huge amount of influence and control the way that matters play out. And there is a lot to work with here in terms of receiving opportunities due to your attitude and due to your own sense of belief, your own sense of faith that you're going to receive something if it's something that you really want. But again, Saturn requires that effort that you put into it as well. So there's a huge amount of focus on the career around this time. And it may even feel like Pluto in the 8th and Uranus in the 12th are almost like an unproductive fascination with getting really deep into some other like completely different kind of topic than what your career may be focused on. So do try to balance those things out. But if things are unclear in the context of your career in the coming year, I wouldn't fret too much about it. Specifically, what I would do is make sure that whatever you're working on currently, you are putting the effort in and that you're putting in pretty clean effort. Try not to take your eye too much off the ball of what you genuinely want if it's not what you're doing right now. And then when you decide to pursue that, to do so in a way that is unwavering, where, hey, if I have to do two different full-time things, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to put the energy into it, and I'm just going to put the effort into it and make it happen for me. Saturn and Neptune are going to respond really, really well to something like that. And so you can, without a doubt, get what you're wanting out of these kinds of transits, but it will require a lot of focus and a great deal of engagement and energy invested. Additionally, here, these are all in alignment with each other. So notice they're all very early in the degrees. There's a sextile from Uranus to Saturn and Neptune, and there's a sextile from Saturn and Neptune to Pluto, and Pluto is trine to Uranus. So they're all playing to some extent together into the context of like everything that's going on for all of us in the coming years. And so the way that this is playing out for you is along the lines of really asking you about the impact of your position, your reputation in the world on your psyche, and even more importantly, vice versa. So, are there ways in which you limit yourself because you maybe don't believe that you're capable of something? If that's the case, now would be the time to really try it. Just go for it. Just try it. With Saturn and Neptune in that 10th house, you're likely, if you put in that effort with integrity, you're really actually likely to turn any sort of no or difficulty or challenge or hiccup along the way into a yes and into getting that opportunity there. So you may need to psych yourself up because this looks big. This looks like something that is pretty expansive in terms of goal setting. And so you may need to psych yourself up for that a bit and to really make sure that you are fully believing in yourself around that. That's going to be really important for you. Now, in terms of Jupiter and Mars, this year is probably going to play out in two parts. So early in the year, the first 5 months or so of the year, you're going to have Mars in Cancer. And so that is complicated and it can bring up difficulties, challenges, conflict, even annoying things that are just kind of irritating, or real problems that require effort and energy to be put into them to sort out. So, and this is playing out then in Cancer in your first house of self, body, motivation, how you come off to others. Also, often, from my experience with Mars in the first, it can definitely be how people approach you too. And so with Mars there, people can be weirdly jerky and weirdly like conflictual and coming at you kind of like already in a bad mood. And it's like, I had nothing to do with whatever weird mood you're in, so I don't know why you're being so snippy or whatnot. But we also want to keep in mind when Mars is in the first that you can come off, especially with this in retrograde for a lot of it, you could also accidentally come off as a little bit more domineering or conflictual than you would intend. So try to make sure that you're not giving off subtle cues along those lines that people then are projecting their concerns onto and then reacting at you with aggression or with an attitude or whatnot. Now, also, this could have you feeling kind of sluggish or down, like under the weather, down with the weather. So this could definitely have you under the weather as well, a bit more than normal in the beginning of the year. And it can do interesting things to the motivation when that Mars is in retrograde, which it will be from the beginning of the year, I think, to the end of February approximately. So for the first like couple few months of the year, you may be feeling kind of sluggish, but then having Mars direct in your first house, having just sorted out a whole bunch of mess of problems and questions and things like that, you may actually find that after a couple of months at least, that your motivation really starts to amp up, and that you feel like, all right, you know what, I just want to do. I don't want to be held back by, whatever this nebulous, annoying transit is that I've been dealing with recently, and the weird attitudes of others like, screw it, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do whatever it is that I need to do. So it's likely that that's going to be experienced kind of in both ways, motivation wise and energy wise, when it comes to the retrograde versus the direct. Now, what's nice about this alignment for all of us, but especially for you, is that Jupiter then, after approximately May, Mars finally moves into Leo again. It moves out of your first house. But then in about the second week of June, Jupiter moves into that first house. And what's nice about that is I love when Jupiter follows Mars because it cleans that whole mess up for good. Really much better, to where rather than just cleaning up the mess, it is cleaning up the mess and redoing the whole room. So this is a really wonderful transit to experience Jupiter in the first. It is, generally speaking, like as general as possible. If there's something you want, you're much more likely to get it around this period of time. People tend to approach you with a huge amount of goodwill and with the kind of an expectation of friendship and warmth. And people will very likely do favors for you and make you offers, even if you don't need something, so to say, to just help out, just to be nice. It's also very, very fortunate. So things just kind of fall into place a lot more easily when we're dealing with Jupiter in a given area of our lives. And for you, this is yourself. So it's very generalized in terms of the amount and the extent of the benefits that Jupiter can offer for you for this year as well. Now, this also really improves your mood and the way that you come off to people. So you come off much more gregarious, again, like someone who is going to be friendly. And so people will approach you more with that expectation and with that kind of attitude towards you, which is very, very nice. Additionally, development and improvement of you, your personality, your spirit, also your health, but additionally taking just better care of yourself in the coming year. So this will be here from June of 25 to about June of 26. So you get a full year of this transit. And yeah, it's just really good luck. It's really nice. It's where pretty much all parts of our life come together because it's us. So that's what Jupiter is benefiting here. Now, as Mars then moves on from that first house, it's going to move into your second house. And that can be a little bit annoying, but it's only going to be for about a couple months that it'll be here. And that can bring up those Martian kind of issues of conflicts or challenges or little annoyances, little things that go wrong, whatnot. But it can also require a lot more effort with finance and your resources, also your values, your security, your self-value, your income, things like this. So you might wind up then having to work more for your money, so to say. And so this could be, you've still got the same amount of clients, but they're just being more demanding. They're being more nitpicky. They're requiring more effort or something like this, where you're maybe even then having to redo work to make it really correct. So requiring more effort for kind of the same. Now, there could also be some unexpected expenses that arise with Mars in the second house, or spending such that it's like, man, I didn't think about the fact that these three purchases would add up to that amount. So we could just have kind of complications along those lines of finance. But Again, try not to worry about it too much and try not to be hard on yourself about that, because it's only going to be a couple months. And then finally, we get normal, just 1 month in pretty much each sign Mars for a long time before it goes retrograde again in like 2 years. And yeah, then we're finally out of that big old Mars cycle. Now, speaking to the eclipses that are coming up, we are going to have these shifting from the Aries Libra axis, where the north and south node were, to very early in the year, the nodal axis will be shifting. And so we will start to have eclipses in Pisces and Virgo. Now, this nodal axis here, that is representative of the fact that every year, of course, the sun goes up above the up to the northern hemisphere, and it drops into the southern hemisphere. It drops up above and below. So the moon does the same over the course of a month. And it's where those two, say, wavelengths align and intersect that we get eclipses, because then we have the sun and the moon on the same plane as the earth. And so you get the sun in the way of the moon, or rather the earth in the way of the light of the sun to the moon, or you wind up with the moon getting in the way of the sun from the perspective of the earth. And that's how we get eclipses. So the nodal axis is that intersection point. So the eclipses will then always fall pretty close to the nodal axis. Now, because of the fact that this axis has just changed, it moves backward in zodiacal order always. The planets usually move counterclockwise around the chart. The nodal axis moves clockwise, so it's retrograde 100% of the time. So since it's retrograde, it has just moved into Pisces. Now, because it's on the cusp, instead of a solar eclipse in Pisces, we're getting a solar eclipse actually in Aries, because it's still close here at 9 Aries on March 29th. And so in terms of that spring solar eclipse that we'll be dealing with, that will be in your 10th house. And so that can indicate, especially if it is affecting a personal placement of yours, if it's pretty close to a conjunction or an opposition or something to a major planet, that can indicate promotions or reorientations in your career, again, to better align with your current values, with your current concerns. So how is it that your values have developed in recent years, and is what you're doing currently still in alignment with that, or have you outgrown it? Or do you need to be promoted because you have pretty much mastered the level that you're at, and maybe need to either be promoted or to move into a higher position elsewhere? So we can get major reorientations with eclipses in the 10th house along those lines of you having developed beyond a certain level at this point and needing to either then find a position that aligns with that in terms of values or in terms of finances and title and so on and so forth. So otherwise, what we're dealing with is eclipses along the Pisces Virgo axis, which will be playing out in your 9th house of spirituality, your worldview, higher learning, foreign cultures, things like this, philosophy, and your 3rd house of day-to-day study and learning, languages, communication, your locality, the city that's around you, your community, your relatives, and so forth. So also technology. So I would be careful sometimes with technology in the spring and fall. You may find that just a phone or a computer or something just suddenly conks out on you around the times of the eclipses. So this indicates that there is a growth and increase and orientation toward the development of your worldview as well as your spiritual practice. So a focus on that, a growing toward that around this time. Additionally, you could find yourself studying or teaching, going back to school, taking a course, doing webinars, whatnot, any way that you would want to do that. The ninth house isn't going to tell you that it needs to be any sort of like an accredited thing or whatnot. You may also then find yourself training or teaching as well. And you could also find yourself taking some really significant travel that has a pretty big impact on you and your maturity level and your worldview around the coming year and a half or so that we have the nodal axis along these lines. Now, you may also feel the need to move. And the reason that I say this is that the South Node tends to indicate things that we need to release or that we feel that we've outgrown. And in the third house, that has to do with our locality, our community, the people that we deal with day to day. So you could feel like there's a mismatch there. And the antidote that you could feel really strongly along those lines to that issue is to go somewhere else, to be somewhere else, and to experience something completely different and completely new, to expand your horizons in that way, with the North Node then in your ninth house. So that could come up as a pretty big urge. And I don't see any indications, at least in the coming year, against that, as that being any sort of a problem for you. So it might be something to consider if that comes up as an urge. Additionally, the ninth house has to do with publishing. And so you could find that you are writing more, because we have the third has to do with writing communication, but then the ninth brings that out into the world. So it has to do with publishing and things like this. So you could be then falling back on your writing skills, Virgo, for sure here, and also the third house, and really getting into that, really leaning into that pretty strongly, and then deciding that this is something that you want to publish. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be through a publishing house. This could be through a blog. It could be through like YouTube videos, even communicating, coming up with an idea, working it out in your head or on paper, and then putting it out there into the world. So that may be something that you feel the urge to do as well around the coming spring and autumn. And yeah, again, I don't see any reason that you shouldn't do that. Jupiter in your first and Saturn and Neptune in your 10th. I see no reason that you shouldn't do that. Additionally, increased philosophical engagement. So wanting to discuss, debate, engage, discourse over these philosophical matters with people, possibly with people even from other cultures that can kind of give you a different viewpoint than you're used to engaging with. So yeah, it looks to me overall for you, Cancer, like a very spiritually and philosophically inclined year, all things considered, speaking to the outer planets, Jupiter and Mars, and the eclipses that are coming up for you. I think that you're probably getting a lot more into something like that. It's also going to change up your career in some way that looks quite significant, and probably really lucky, because you also then have Jupiter moving from your 12th, where things can work out for us, but we might not even be aware of how things are aligning for us. And then it starts to become really, really clear as to how things are getting out of the way and finally falling into place, with Jupiter moving into your first as well. So this upcoming year looks pretty interesting, looks pretty nice. I would just watch out for any sort of deception when it comes to career matters, and any manipulations when it comes to relationship matters. And other than that, it looks like a pretty decent year. So I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Cancer. So with all of that said, I hope you have an absolutely beautiful year. And again, if you want to go into this in more detail, do feel free to book a personal reading. I would love to look into how all of these transits are playing out in your own individual chart. And again, if you don't mind hitting the thumbs up button, greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate that. And feel free to subscribe for future videos. I would love to have you here. And yeah, other than all of that, I again hope you have an absolutely beautiful year, and I will talk to you all soon. Be good. Bye.